Hi, and welcome to my channel. So today I just wanted to continue from where we stopped last week. If you remember last week, we did talk about pornography in general, but today I just wanted to look at the curses as I promised last week. So if you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Jerry. So as you can see, I've said that the pornography users are the real victims of pornography. And that obviously is explained in Ezekiel 23 and obviously in Deuteronomy 28. So, as you can see, we've got things such as multiplication and sexual sin and self-hate and all that. But I just wanted to talk about the ones in red. Maybe I'll talk about, because I'll talk about you'll be hated, I think I'll also talk about self-hate as well, because those two are related. Now, you need to understand that I've done some pretty research on this topic, and so I'm not just giving you what people have said, because obviously, if you go through other people's books, they would probably talk more about things such as objectifications and addictions as the reasons why people shouldn't engage in pornography. But for me, those things are just very minor. I have done my thorough research with very clear examples, as you would find in the book, Godly Bear Pleasures. And I just wanted to just point out some of the key things out to you. So the first issue that I have and have brought out for you is that in pornography, you will hate yourself. You will hate yourself and be hated after the consumption. Now, normally, what happens is that after consuming pornography, and it doesn't matter if someone is single or married, the consumer tends to get upset with themselves because of the different things involved in it. So they're not actually upset because they have just ordinarily watched porn. No, that's not the reason. It's still part of the reason, but not really the major reason. So obviously, remember that porn, from what we said last week, is that porn does not satisfy. It is not the final gain. It is just a messenger. So when people consume porn, it motivates them to then move a step above the point of just watch. And so what tends to happen is that people then waste so much time consuming porn, whether it is on the internet, on the phone, or wherever. So when you check the time wasted whilst consuming porn, it is so much that the consumer then begins to detest their act, and yet they couldn't stop. They still continue. So that's part of the hate. But actually, if we go back to Ezekiel 23, 23 actually did talk about there, God clearly says that when people do engage in porn, they hate themselves and they will be hated. So obviously that's the next item there. I said that you'll be hated, and that will be found in verses 23 to 33 as well as 37, and I'll give you the reason for that. Now, what happens if you remember that in our present day, when people do engage in porn, they expose their nakedness. They actually, some people do go ahead to expose themselves, make videos of themselves, or maybe the person they eventually slept with, and send it to them. Now, what happens is that those people would then, having watched the videos, for some reason, it's very, look, I cannot explain it better than what the Bible said, but what happens is that after watching it, it gets to a point where those people then begin to hate or loathe the porn user or whoever has made those nude videos and sent to them. Now, they might have loved them initially, but they end up hating them. And when that hate crops in, that's when people begin to um, upload those videos on the internet. Some people actually do circulate them to maybe family members or the police and start making allegations. So these are just the reasons why when people get entangled in porn, they realize that it has gone beyond them. So they are hated and they are also beginning to hate themselves beyond their own control. So this is part of the reasons why the Bible says that we shouldn't watch porn, because when we do, that hate would crop up naturally and we cannot stop it. Obviously, the book explains much more than I have just said. Now, the other reason is found under porn being something that opens a contradictory inner eyes. Now, what do I mean by contradictory inner eyes? So this means that for those people that are married, so this is something that actually does go on to break the marriage. When people are married and they watch porn, what then happens is that because they keep looking at polished ladies or polished men, because obviously, as you know, the videos are very well polished. They look very expensive and very unique. So what happens is that these performers just look so extraordinary, not just in their flesh and their facial beauty, but even in strength. For example, the men would be portrayed to go for, I don't know how many rounds, but maybe hours upon hours, and the women the same, non-stop, and they just look very, very extraordinary in strength and in beauty. And then what happens is that you, as the consumer, you begin to imagine when you and your spouse could actually do such extraordinary things, when you would um, go that far in your strength, as well as when would your own spouse be that beautiful. Now, what does this trigger in your heart? It begins to trigger an inner eye that you never had before. So it is now contradictory. Your wife or your husband could be the best in the world. They could be very beautiful or handsome. But this inner eye, this fake eye that has been triggered, will then begin to see them from a negative point. They would look ugly, they would look weak, they would look like a log of wood on the bed, they would not satisfy you. And the end result could be separation or divorce. And so, this is one of the reasons why I would say that you shouldn't watch porn, no matter what you think about it. And the third reason why you should not watch porn is mental illness. And I repeat this, mental illness. You probably think, where in the Bible is mental illness mentioned? Well, I did mention in Deuteronomy, it is there. There's also something that I have seen. I mean, I have worked in different places, and in one of those places, obviously for confidentiality, I won't go deeper than this. But one of the places I've worked, one thing I've seen is that people with now, one thing I have to be clear is that I haven't done research on this to know where or how this flows. I don't know if the mental illness is what triggers the porn in certain people, or if the porn is what triggers the mental illness in certain people. So I wouldn't go beyond that. However, what I wanted to say with regards to that is that there's a relationship between mental illness and porn in certain people. Now, let me take a step backwards to what I wanted to say initially. Now, this is the one that I'm very sure of. Now, think about those people that engage in um, BDSM, and in the type of BDSM I'm talking about is, or yeah, is where some of them actually drink urine. It could be their urine or their partner's urine. Some is actually feces, so it could be their own feces or their partner's feces, and sometimes they combine them. So for someone or for two people to play with or eat or drink either feces or urine for the purpose of, well, for any purpose really, but in this case for the purpose of sexual satisfaction, that on its own is mental illness. And there is no other reason why any person or people would be engaged um, in in urine or any other waste product consumption. And obviously, in my book, and of course we'll get to that, I have, from my research, I did mention that obviously some of these things came from idolatrous worship, which is right. However, I just need to point out that these things have some mental illnesses attached to them. Nobody in their right senses would drink or consume waste products, whether of their own or animal, for any reason whatsoever, let alone for sexual satisfaction. And that is what I just wanted to point out. If you do buy your book, you would find out that I've actually given you more details there. And so, yeah, that's just all I wanted to say. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to send them to me and I'll be pleased to answer them. Thank you very much for your time and God bless.